Effective immediately, the United States Navy, the finest in the world, will begin the process of blockading any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz.
Right now on Morning News Now, standoff at sea. The U.S. military boards another.
417 local, Strait of Hormuz. Gunnery Sergeant Daniel Velez is tightening his gloves inside the wash of a helicopter spotlight, staring down at a rust-streaked cargo vessel plowing through black water. In 7 minutes, everything he knows about routine maritime interdictions will be shattered. Along the Iranian coast, radars are waking up, missile crews are moving, and a trap is beginning to close. This is how a regional crisis begins. The sea looks calm enough to lie to you. Tankers move in long, slow columns. Navigation lights blink red, green, white. The mountains above Bandar Abbas are dark silhouettes against a fading sky. To the north sits Keshem Island. To the east, the Gulf of Oman opens like a doorway. And between them all is the Strait of Hormuz, barely wide enough in places to remind every sailor on Earth how fragile global trade really is. Roughly a fifth of the world's seaborne oil passes through this corridor. Every captain in these waters knows it. Every admiral does too. Imagine you're here, breathing diesel fumes and salt spray, knowing one wrong signal can spike markets, trigger mobilization, and send families around the world watching breaking news before breakfast. Tonight's fictional scenario is framed by a very real map and very real hardware. A U.S. Navy surface action group is screening traffic near the separation lanes. An Arleigh Burke-class destroyer sits to the south with Aegis combat systems hot. Another Burke is farther east, linked by cooperative engagement capability and Link 16. Overhead, a P-8A Poseidon is orbiting beyond visual range, painting the surface picture. Higher still, an MQ-4C Triton is feeding maritime tracks from altitude. To the west, U.S. Fifth Fleet Command elements in Bahrain are monitoring every commercial lane. Farther back, Al-Udeid and Al-Dafra are alert. And riding the dark water just beyond the boarding zone is an amphibious warship carrying Marines trained for exactly this moment. The target doesn't look like much. A 4,000-ton coaster using the name Karima Trader, registered through a shell company, transmitting an AIS identity that doesn't match its draft, its cargo profile, or its last port call. It was supposed to be hauling construction aggregate. But satellite imagery picked up container modifications inconsistent with bulk cargo handling. Signals intelligence flagged short-burst encrypted emissions from its bridge wing. Then came the strongest indicator of all. It slowed twice near the traffic lanes without operational reason, right where commercial tankers begin compressing into predictable tracks. That is how ships get used as sensors, relays, staging platforms, or worse, mine layers. Velez and 23 Marines from a maritime raid force are moving to board and clear it. Their support package is textbook and deadly serious. 2 ribs. 1 MH-60S overhead. 1 sniper overwatch team. Electronic support measures listening for spiking emissions. A Navy boarding officer handling hails and escalation. They expect resistance. What they do not yet know is that resistance is only one layer of the plan. Because 50 miles away, in hardened revetments and camouflaged launch points near Bandar Abbas and on the islands overlooking the channel, Iranian commanders in this fictional scenario believe they've found the perfect pressure point. The idea is brutally simple. Let the Americans commit to a boarding. Force them into a legally complex, politically exposed position in one of the busiest choke points on Earth. Then trigger a coordinated show of force around them, drones from concealed launch racks, anti-ship cruise missiles from mobile batteries, fast attack craft from IRGC Navy pens, and a flood of electronic noise meant to turn one boarding into a rolling crisis. Not a full war. Not yet. A stalking action. A carefully staged confrontation designed to humiliate, confuse, and push Washington into a choice between retreat and escalation. Their calculation makes sense on paper. The strait is crowded. Civilian traffic is everywhere. Decision makers hate ambiguity. The U.S. boarding team will be physically exposed on a neutral-flagged vessel. Regional capitals will be watching. Insurance markets will panic. Social media clips will appear before official statements. And if even one American ship is damaged, the headline writes itself. In their minds, this is not about sinking a fleet. It is about making the most powerful navy in the world hesitate in front of the cameras. But they overlooked something. Actually, several things. They assumed the Americans were reacting to a suspicious ship. In reality, the ship was already part of a much larger intelligence picture. They assumed emissions discipline on the coast had held. It hadn't. They assumed mobile launchers shifting under camouflage nets could not be fused fast enough with maritime tracks to enable real-time intercept geometry. Wrong again. And most dangerous of all, they assumed the boarding team was the prey. That is the flaw in their thinking. Because once the network is exposed, every transmitter, every boat wake, every launch plume becomes part of a target set. Could you see that in time if you were making the call from a bunker under pressure, with minutes collapsing into seconds? At 0424, the first warning arrives from space-based infrared sensors. 2 brief heat blooms inland. Not commercial. Not random. Missile class signatures. 34 seconds later, the Eastern destroyer's spy radar begins correlating a high-speed ballistic track rising over the coast. Then a second. Simultaneously, the Triton reports 14 surface contacts leaving sheltered positions north of Lyric Island, accelerating hard toward the traffic lane in dispersed formation. The P-8A detects additional emissions from the suspect vessel, short, sharp bursts, likely cueing signals. On the destroyer, the tactical action officer doesn't need a speech. He needs numbers, vectors, confidence levels. He gets them. General quarters. Now you're there. Steel decks vibrating beneath your boots. Red lights flooding passageways. The shriek of the alarm. Helm answering course corrections. VLS crews reporting ready. Electronic warfare stations leaning over glowing consoles. On the boarding boats, Marines look up as the calm night sound changes texture. Rotor wash. Radio traffic. A clipped voice in their headsets. Break, break, break. Possible coordinated hostile action. Execute contingency black tide. Repeat. Black tide. Velez is already climbing the pilot ladder when the boarding order changes from compliant inspection to contested seizure. His first man hits the rail. Second man follows. Muzzles up. Eyes wide. The deck stinks of hot metal, fuel oil, and paint. 2 crewmen freeze near the stern hatch. Another runs. The Marines drive forward, clearing the bridge access, engine room ladder, and container stacks modified with fresh weld seams. One of the Navy EOD specialists sees what the imagery analyst suspected: concealed launch cradles built inside false cargo housings, likely for one-way attack drones or anti-ship decoys. This was never a merchantman in any meaningful sense. It was bait with teeth. At 0426, the fight opens for real. The ballistic missiles are first because they are always first in the timeline, if not in the mind. Aegis responds instantly. Track quality solid. Threat evaluation confirms probable anti-ship profiles. The nearest destroyer kicks 2 SM-3 class interceptors into the darkness, followed by SM-6 as a lower layer hedge. Vertical launch cells rip fire into the pre-dawn sky. The sound is not a bang. It is a violent mechanical exhale followed by thunder hammering across the water. 4 seconds later, another destroyer adds its own interceptors, not because the first ship missed, but because layered defense is built on redundancy, not hope. High above the strait, the first intercept blossoms. White flash. Fragment cloud. Track broken. The second ballistic missile survives another few seconds, maneuvering on descent, then disappears inside a second SM-6 kill basket. Another flash. Another debris arc. 2 launched. 2 destroyed. The men in the CIC do not cheer. They are already deeper in the sequence. Because now the low flyers arrive. From coastal batteries and concealed island positions come 12 anti-ship cruise missiles in staggered waves, sea-skimming, terrain-masked, time to force the defenders to sort civilian clutter from weapon tracks at brutal speed. Behind them, 18 drones fan out in loose packs, some likely carrying explosives, others almost certainly intended as decoys to consume interceptors and flood radar scopes. At surface level, the 14 fast attack craft keep closing, engines screaming, wakes cutting white scars into black water. Their profiles suggest mixed armament: rockets, heavy machine guns, maybe anti-ship missiles on a few. This is the layered rush. 1 threat. Then 5. Then 20. Then the whole screen comes alive. The US response is not one weapon. It is a system. E-2D airborne warning from farther south feeds track refinement. The destroyers share a single air picture. Electronic attack begins immediately, degrading guidance links where possible. The first outer ring goes to standard missiles. SM-2s and SM-6X reach for the cruise missiles before they can sort into terminal attack geometry. 2 disappear at 40 nautical miles. Another at 32. A fourth breaks apart so low its debris hisses into the sea like molten rain. The drones complicate the picture, and that is the point. But Aegis was built for complexity. Yes, SMs take the medium layer. Rolling airframe missiles and CRAM hold the close ring. Every layer buys seconds. Every second saves lives. Now from the enemy's view, the picture starts turning ugly. Their opening volley was supposed to fracture the defense. Instead, the defense is consuming it in rings, like a predator closing its jaw in stages. What they thought would be a confusion window becomes a firing solution cascade. Their missiles are not meeting panic. They are meeting doctrine, sensor fusion, and crews drilled until response is muscle memory. At 0428, 2F divided by a -18E Super Hornets already on armed overwatch are cleared hot against the surface swarm. An MH-60R drops lower to classify the lead boats and begins queuing Hellfire shots. A Marine team on the captured vessel pops smoke on the starboard side as one of the fast craft tries to angle into machine gun range. Could you hold that deck, with tracers starting to walk over dark water toward you, while knowing the ship beneath your boots may itself be rigged to kill you? The answer tonight is yes. The first Hellfire slams into the lead fast attack craft and turns it into a sudden orange torch. The second boat shears away, then catches 30mm fire from the helicopter and begins to burn. Super Hornets roll in next, using precision-guided munitions on the outer cluster where the boats are still tightly packed.
One explosion. Then two.
Then the formation collapses into evasive turns, exactly what the Americans want. Because scattered boats are easier to track, easier to isolate, and far less dangerous as a coordinated wave. Back in the air battle, the count keeps moving. 12 cruise missiles launched. 7 destroyed beyond the inner ring. 2 more killed by YSSM inside 20 miles. 1 drone pack breaks left, likely trying to flank the destroyer's strongest coverage.
It meets CRAM.
Another descends toward the boarding zone and is shredded by a burst of phalanx, the unmistakable chainsaw growl of last-ditch defense ripping the sky apart. Spent fragments rain into the water around the suspect vessel. Marines on deck instinctively flinch, then keep moving.
Heart pounding.
Hands slick inside gloves. This is real enough to feel even in fiction. In the bridge compartment of the seized ship, the boarding team finds confirmation of the entire trap.
Encrypted. Radios.
Secondary navigation sets. Control laptops hardwired to concealed antenna runs. Storage crates with drone components and limpet mine housings. One hidden compartment contains infrared decoys and signal relays designed to mimic larger ship signatures. That changes the legal picture, the intelligence picture, and the response options all at once. This is no longer a suspicious vessel. This is an operational node in an attack network. And then comes the most dangerous minute of the whole scenario. At 0431, 3 surviving cruise missiles punch through clutter and maneuver in from different bearings while 6 drones descend almost vertically toward the boarding zone. One fast craft, masked in the surface clutter, gets within rocket range of the seized vessel. For a few seconds, the battle compresses. Radar alarms, radio calls, deck reports, aviation control, weapons release authority. Everything piles into the same narrow slice of time. Less time than it takes to send a text. Less time than your microwave needs to warm coffee. The destroyer nearest the boarding team commits hard.
2 YSSMs. 1 SM-2 in support. CRAM spins. Phalanx stands by. The first cruise missile vanishes at 9 miles. The second survives until 5, then breaks into flaming debris. The third loses lock under jamming, descends, and slams harmlessly into the water just off the port beam of a tanker already veering away under emergency maneuvering. On the surface, the hidden fast craft fires rockets. 2 miss wide.
1 impacts the seized vessel's superstructure and sprays hot fragments across the bridge wing. Velez is thrown flat. 1 Marine takes shrapnel in the shoulder. Another suffers a concussion.
Nobody stops.
An MH-60S door gun answers first. Then a 25mm system from a nearby patrol craft hammers the attacker until its bow lifts, its engine compartment erupts, and it rolls into the channel trailing fire. That is the closest the operation comes to disaster. 1 missile closer. 1 rocket better aimed. 1 slower relay in the network. That is how thin the margin can be, even for the best-equipped force in the world. Each sailor and Marine in this scenario has a family waiting somewhere far from this water. That matters. It always matters. By 0434, the defensive phase is turning decisive. Final air defense tally in this fictional engagement: 2 ballistic missiles launched, 2 destroyed. 12 cruise missiles launched, 11 neutralized by intercept or electronic defeat, 1 splashing short after guidance loss. 18 drones committed, 17 destroyed, 1 crashing into open water after partial control failure. 14 fast attack craft engaged, 9 disabled or sunk in the first exchange, the rest scattering north under pressure. The attack did not collapse because of 1 miracle shot. It collapsed because the system held. Now comes the question every adversary fears and every commander anticipates: What happens after the defense works? At 0435, the authorization chain moves fast because the evidence is now overwhelming. The vessel has been confirmed as a hostile operational platform. U.S. forces have come under coordinated attack from identifiable launch points. Maritime traffic is endangered. The right of self-defense is no longer theoretical. It is immediate. Orders go out across the network with the cold simplicity of professional force. Suppress launch sites, break command links, sever the attack chain, preserve freedom of navigation. This is where many people imagine chaos. In reality, the counterstrike is methodical. The first targets are sensors. An enemy that cannot see is an enemy that cannot coordinate. Growler electronic attack expands. Cyber and signals teams keep feeding refinements. A destroyer launches Tomahawks against pre-vetted coastal radar nodes tied to the attack corridor. Super Hornets armed with standoff weapons swing toward missile batteries near Bandar Abbas and positions on Keshem and Larak used to support the strike package. A submarine already in theater contributes land attack missiles against command and control facilities linked to the coastal network.
Not a battle. Not a test.
A calculated demonstration. At 0438, the first coastal radar site goes dark. At 0440, a mobile anti-ship battery attempting relocation is caught on an exit road and destroyed. At 0442, Revet drone launch shelters on Keshem erupt in secondary explosions, exactly the kind that tell analysts ammunition and fuel were stored inside. At 0444, the communications relay that tied the disguised vessel to shore command disappears from the spectrum. Silence can be louder than fire when you know what it means. And the pressure on the remaining fast boats gets even worse. P-8A tracking hands them off cleanly. Super Hornets push them north. The helicopter element keeps striking opportunity targets. One boat beaches itself trying to escape. Two more are abandoned by their crews. Another limps back toward the coast trailing smoke. The hunt is over because the prey misidentified the predator. Meanwhile, aboard the captured vessel, Marines continue clearance compartment by compartment. Engine room secured. Bridge secured. Communications locker seized. EOD confirms demolition charges had been placed near a ballast compartment, likely intended either to scuttle the ship in the channel or destroy evidence after the attack began. Think about that for a second. If those charges had gone off in the right place at the right moment, even without a single successful missile hit, traffic through one of the most important waterways on Earth could have been snarled, diverted, or halted amid panic. Strategic disruption does not always require a sinking warship. Sometimes it requires only smoke, headlines, and uncertainty. That is why the counterattack keeps moving up the chain. Launchers are replaceable. Networks are not, at least not quickly. So the next set of targets is the connective tissue, command vans relay. Trucks, launch preparation areas, fuel points, and storage sites. Bases to production. Production to command chain. Future capability denial. That is the logic. Not rage. Not symbolism. Removal of the ability to do it again tomorrow. By 0451, the pace of hostile action drops sharply. No fresh missile launches. No coherent drone swarms. No organized fastboat rush. Intercepts continue against isolated stragglers, but the crisis has shifted from defense to containment. Tankers are rerouted through protected lanes. Civilian masters are receiving emergency advisories. U.S. ships widen spacing and re-establish layered cover. Medical teams are working the wounded Marine and two sailors injured by secondary fragments. Nothing about the scene feels cinematic up close. It feels loud, hot, crowded, exhausting. Brass casings on deck. Radios crackling. Smoke hanging low over the water. Men checking each other for blood by red light. At 0459, 42 minutes after the first boarding movement began, the operation is effectively over. The aftermath is brutally clear. Final tally, 14 hostile surface craft committed, all destroyed, abandoned, or driven from the engagement area. 32 airborne threats launched in total. 31 neutralized by intercept, jamming, or loss of guidance. 1 impacted open water with no strategic effect. 1 disguised operational vessel seized intact. 2 coastal radar sites destroyed. 3 anti-ship missile positions eliminated. 4 drone infrastructure points hit. Multiple command and control nodes severed. U.S. losses in this fictional scenario: 1 Marine seriously wounded, 4 personnel with lesser injuries, no ship sunk, no commercial tanker lost, no closure of the strait. That is the part people remember, the numbers. But numbers only matter because of what they reveal. In less than 3/4 of an hour, A plan built on ambiguity, geography, and political pressure was dismantled by integrated sensors, disciplined crews, and layered defense. The attackers believed crowding the battlespace would create hesitation. Instead, it created signatures. They believed proximity would protect them. Instead, it compressed them into a trackable kill chain. They believed a disguised vessel and a timed swarm could fracture decision-making. Instead, they handed their opponent legal clarity, intelligence confirmation, and targetable nodes. And that is the larger lesson of this hypothetical. Modern maritime conflict is no longer about a single ship firing at another ship over the horizon. It is about who sees first, fuses first, decides first, and acts without breaking the architecture under pressure. Information dominance is not a slogan. It is survival. The boarding team mattered. The destroyers mattered. The aircraft mattered. But what truly decided the outcome was integration. Space sensors to radar, radar to shooters, shooters to legal authority to counterstrike. One network held. The other was systematically erased. So ask yourself, in the next crisis at sea, what will matter more? Raw missile count, or the side that can turn chaos into a picture and that picture into action before the first plume even peeks over the coast? Which decision was most critical? Debate below. Hit subscribe for in-depth military breakdowns.